Welcome to MPMe. This is Aaron Bittman, software developer. Before I explain my program, let me tell a little about myself. I'm a cheapskate who loves music. I used to buy cheap MP3 players with terrible, frustrating interfaces. The controls were terribly counterintuitive, like the left and right arrow buttons would navigate up and down. Sometimes it seemed that no matter what sequence of buttons I would push, the player would do nothing but play the same one file. Eventually, I found several decent models, but even those players didn't have the best interfaces imaginable. Some of them didn't know, when finishing the songs in one folder, to go to the next folder in the hierarchy. I would have to navigate there manually. Also, they didn't let me jump to the point in the song I wanted. Rewinding and fast-forwarding were slow and awkward. The same goes for volume control. Plus, because the radio was so much louder than the MP3s, I wished the MP3 player had a separate volume control for the radio and saved that setting separately. And in many of the programs I saw, when I organized my songs into folders, I couldn't edit the order. Even people who listen to, say, Spotify on their smartphones can't rearrange the order of songs in one of their playlists. One day, at a job interview, the interviewer asked me to design software for a device of my choice. I said, an MP3 player. I proceeded to draw a diagram with entities and relationships. I found the project fun and intriguing. So later, at home, I started to design a database to model the folders and files, but then I decided, why reinvent the wheel? Why not just use the Windows operating system that's already on my laptop here? I just happened to be studying tkinter at the time, doing other projects with it, so I used that interface to implement a GUI for my dream MP3 player, or a close simulation of it. This player would give you complete control of its content and the order thereof. You would be in control. You would leave your mark on the contents, hence the name MPMe. So, as I implied earlier, I wrote this program to work on Windows. Maybe in the future I might expand it to run on other operating systems. So, here I have the main Python file mpme.py open and idle. So I run it. You can see, by the way, that the music player uses the Pygame library, which has several shortcomings. For instance, it only plays MP3 files. In the past, I included code to include WAV files. You'll see hints of that in the file lister class. But I had to get rid of that. Also, you have to work around one quirk in Pygame's music player, as I'll explain later. And also, notice that my program created a folder view and a settings folder because those didn't exist yet. Now here is the start screen of my program. BPM is the name of my fictitious company that I'm pretending made this player. Until I design a company logo, I'm just using a picture of myself instead. By the way, I'm also pretending that this device has a touch screen. The mouse pointer represents your finger. You'll see that I use buttons to avoid the need for touching the keyboard. So if you click the Folders button, you'll see what files are in there initially, that is to say, none. A real player would, of course, need to get the music files from some machine, like the one I'm using now. So let's close MPMe and look at my root C drive and refresh the view, and you can see that my program created one folder for the folder view and one for the settings. Those are supposed to represent the folders in the player. So let's open the MPMe folder view and copy into it all the folders and MP3 files we want on this player. Now, let's run MPMe again. and go to Folders. Now you can see the folders to which we can navigate and the files we can play. You can navigate to subfolders and view the files in each. Now, let's look at this folder containing some music of Aaron Bittman, which, by the way, I would highly recommend. You can look up these albums on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, Google Play, and anywhere digital music is available. Let's adjust the volume so that it won't be terribly loud when I demonstrate playing. That volume level, by the way, will be saved in the settings for the next use. Now, let's navigate to the first album called The One Note and play a song in it. Now let's skip to the end of that song. And see that when it's done, because it's the last song... Oh, I'm sorry, that was not the last song. Okay, let's try that again. I will skip to the end of this song. The player will navigate to the next logical place at the beginning of the next folder. Now, let's look at the third folder, Virtual Garage. Suppose I want to integrate those two songs into another folder. I would have to plug the player back into my device. So let's close MPMe. And pretend we're plugging it back in. Cut the songs from Virtual Garage and paste them into the One Note. And delete Virtual Garage. Now, let's run MPMe again. Look at the folders and see the One Note. Those are the two correct songs, but of course the player doesn't know in what order I want them. So I drag this song to the right place. Now, if I play any song, or navigate to another folder, or return to the start screen, or close the player program, MPMe will save the order so that whenever I navigate back to that folder, the order will be what I specified until I change the order again. Now, an MP3 player has a settings page. And when I started using Pygame for this program, I discovered that some settings are important. When playing some amateur or non-professional recordings, I found the frequency should be somewhat higher, like 48,000 or maybe even 48,500. This, by the way, is a good example of pretending I don't have a keyboard. That's why I needed this keypad. So I'll save my change. Now, here is a recording of a bunch of high school kids performing live. In case you can't tell that it's live, by the way, I'll just fast forward to the end. Anyway, to make that recording sound at roughly the right speed and pitch, I needed to up the frequency. So let's see how a conventional MP3 file sounds at that frequency. It's funny, isn't it? It's like listening to a turntable or a tape player that's running a little too fast. So I'll restore the settings to the factory default and save. Finally, there's the radio, which I'll admit is kind of weird. Since my laptop doesn't have an FM receiver, and I expect most PCs don't, I couldn't include a real radio here, but I feel the radio is an important part of a real MP3 player, so I simulated one, sort of, with a file. Since it's a kind of a hack, I didn't include this file in the code I uploaded, but if you go to the settings folder, you can create this file. Receivingstations.txt. And write in there the frequencies of your favorite radio stations. So, let's go to the radio. The volume control, as I implied earlier, is saved separately from the volume control of the folder view. You can mess with the frequency manually. That asterisk means it's getting the signal. You can scan for stations the player receives. You can simulate failing to get a signal like this. You see that asterisk disappeared. It's no longer getting the signal. Let's make it so that it can get the signal again. And boom. You can select up to 8 station presets. You can delete all your presets. So that's my program in a nutshell. You may have noticed a few other features that I didn't mention because I think they're pretty self-explanatory. And now that you know what the program does, you can look at my code to see how I did it. For instance, in filelister.py, you'll find my next file method with my algorithm for determining what file in what folder comes next after the current one. And feel welcome to give me any feedback on GitHub.